Hi, it's Dwyer, gamblersadvisory.com, dwyervip.com, on Roku, Dwyer Boxing and Sports News. Remember, the opinion you should follow should be your own. Just consider this video to be a second opinion from a complete stranger online. Now, extra word of caution here. You've just heard what I've said. The opinion you should follow should be your own. Understand here, we're going to take risks. By risks, I'm not talking about taking guys who are, 1.3 to 1 or a plus 150 and stuff like that. Sometimes when I think the public's wrong, I'm going to really take risks. We're going to do that here on this fight involving Paulie Malignaggi, a 6 to 1 underdog, and Danny Garcia. Right? Garcia's favored, but yet they're fighting in Malignaggi's neighborhood. Not just a physical location, New York City, but Malignaggi's weight class, 147, right? A weight class over which Malignaggi has been a champion in the past, right? Now, let me say this. I know Danny Garcia has given a lot of recent interviews, interviews since my earlier video where I said Malignaggi's a live dog, right? Garcia's given a lot of interviews where he said, look, I'm getting disrespected. What more do I have to do? I fought the tough fights, right? I fought Amir Khan. Wasn't that me in the ring? I fought Eric Morales. Wasn't that me in the ring? Right? I fought countless other guys. Lucas Matisse. Wasn't that me in the ring? Lamont Peterson. Wasn't that me in the ring? Right? Garcia, no question about it. He's an unbeaten champion. He's fought the tough competition. He deserves our respect. But, right, I believe he's predictable. I believe he's a prototypical, what I call, mid-range hooker. And he's fighting a guy who's very experienced, who's been around the block, who's going to come out in the first round and who's not going to be fazed by his style. I believe this is a tale of two fights. Right? There is an age dynamic here. Garcia is the younger guy. Right? Garcia is the guy with the bigger punch. It's a tale of two fights. Garcia is going to start fast because he's a mid-range hooker. Right? While more complicated fighters are looking around and saying, should I fight inside? Should I fight outside? Should I stick a jab? Should I try to move? Mid-range hookers, the world is much simpler. Right? It's let me get within range. Let me throw some hooks. Right? Maybe I'll set it up with a jab, but then I'm going to throw some hooks. Right? So I think Malignaggi is going to be at his best very early in this fight. The million-dollar question for me, the question that decides the fight for me, is does Malignaggi survive the first 4 rounds of this fight without getting badly hurt? Right? Can he pick up one of the first 4 rounds? If Paulie Malignaggi is unmarked, if Paulie Malignaggi doesn't have a closed eye, if Paulie Malignaggi isn't woozy, hasn't hit the canvas so that a round is a 10-8 round and he's really behind the 8 ball, if Paulie Malignaggi is able to come out and shoot that jab, flick the jab, keep Danny just a little bit off balance, just a little bit uncertain, if he's able to get by the Danny Garcia, Amir Khan part of the fight, right, unscathed, right, relatively healthy, not too far behind on the scorecards. Understand, there's a world of difference between being down 4-0, where you're down by 4 rounds, and 3-1, where you're down by only 2 rounds. If they start the 5th round and Malignaggi is only down 3-1, right, or better, let's say it's 2-2 or 3-1 Malignaggi's favor, then in my opinion, this fight is Paulie Malignaggi's to lose, because I'm expecting Malignaggi to hit stride midway through this fight and then to expose Danny Garcia. He has the blueprint. A tape I keep mentioning here online. The Ashley Teopain fight against Danny Garcia. Right? Malignaggi knows what works against Danny Garcia. In fact, he could go back to the last fight, the Lamont Peterson fight, to see what works against Danny Garcia. Right? To me, Malignaggi shouldn't be a 6-1 underdog. The bet I'm recommending here is Malignaggi, the big underdog, to win the fight, hedged with Garcia by KO. Right? I don't believe Malignaggi's going to fall for Danny's tricks. Right? Danny has a trick where he looks down. Right? And as he looks down and looks away and is not looking at you, he throws wide angle hooks. Right? That's Danny's trick. That's what finished Rod Salka. Right? I believe that's what finished Amir Khan. You understand, you can't go by Danny's eyes. You can't go by his body language. Rather, you have to go by his balance. He plants that front foot, you know a hook's coming, move away. Right? He steps forward trying to fire a jab, you know he's going to abandon the jab and throw hooks, move away. Throw feints. See how well he reads the feints. Understand, his game is to be in the pocket or close to the pocket and throw big hooks with both hands. Right? He's all in. Understand, Malignaggi can use Garcia's body against him. Because when Garcia throws a big punch and he's all in, right? He has all of his power behind it. A shrewd counterpuncher can then pick that entry point, have the punch miss, come in, throw a couple of jabs, and then move away. Malignaggi's also a master at moving his upper body. Since Garcia's punches aren't long, he's not coming with a long overhand right like a Vladimir Klitschko. Since Garcia doesn't have the big ring coverage, since he's not sudden like Sean Porter, right? And by sudden, just think a horror film, right? You look, you see the, villain across the street. Then you look up a split second later, suddenly the villain's right here, and the music goes, right? Danny Garcia isn't sudden. With Danny Garcia, he's a mid-range hooker, so you look, he's in mid-range. You look up again, he's in mid-range. You look up again, he's in mid-range. If you're a veteran fighter, sooner or later, you'll know how to make the adjustment. Sooner or later, you're going to think, you know what? I'm guessing Danny's at mid-range. So let me make sure that I have room to operate, that I don't get caught up on the ropes, that I'm always able to move away a little bit. Right? I believe Malignaggi has been here and has done that. Right? In boxing, Father Time is unbeaten. Malignaggi does have some miles on his tire. Right? He did get stopped by Sean Porter. The question's going to be, is Malignaggi fresh enough to come through the first 4 rounds against a mid-range hooker unscathed? That's the big question. If he does, he's a very live 6-1 underdog. Right? If this fight goes to a decision, and keep in mind, Malignaggi went the distance against Adrian Broner. That was a closely scored fight in Malignaggi's backyard. If it's a photo finish, I believe the fight's gonna go to the sentimental favorite, to the hometown guy. Right? Malignaggi has ring presence. He has charisma. He's one of those guys who can get away with having tassels on his shoes, tassels on his shorts. Right? He's the kind of guy who knows how to play to the crowd. Right? You remember I made a video about Manny Pacquiao, Floyd Mayweather before that fight. And I was saying, if I were Pacquiao, knowing that Floyd is respected but not loved, I would try to play to the crowd. Especially since You knew Mayweather was going to be defensive. You knew Mayweather was going to be backing up, trying to set traps. So if you're the front foot heavy guy, if you're the guy pushing the action, if you're the lead, not the counter, why not motion to the crowd and say, hey, get this guy to fight me, right? Get the crowd on your side, right? Have a little bit of relish on the hot dog. Wave to fans. Let the fans know this guy's not hurting me. I'm moving where I want to move. I'm looking good. I'm pretty. Well, Malignaggi knows exactly how to do that. Right? Malignaggi is a showman. The question is, can he survive the bombs to get to the show? Right? If he makes it to the 5th round and this fight is relatively even, I believe this 6-1 underdog beats Danny Garcia. Right? I think casual bettors are overlooking the fact that Garcia is fighting at 147 for this fight, after a career at 140, and let's face it, 143, right? Danny Garcia might as well have catch weight as his middle name. Right? Understand, too, guys like Mauricio Herrera, technical types, and Malignaggi's a technician. Technical types have gone the distance with Danny Garcia. Ashley Theophane went the distance with Danny Garcia. Right? Guys who enter the ring and are thinking of beating you on slick counters and stuff like that, who aren't thinking of throwing that out the window and trying to duke it out with you, which is what Amir Khan did. Right? They can actually go rounds with Danny Garcia. Now, if you look at Garcia's fight against Lamont Peterson, right, you're going to notice that, Lamont Peterson comes out and is tentative in that fight. If Lamont had just started his onslaught a little bit earlier, rather than wait until after the 6th round, if he would have waited until after the 4th round, I think Lamont Peterson would have clearly won that fight. As it is, many of you believe that Lamont Peterson won that fight. That fight's a little bit in that gray area, isn't it? Right? My point is this. Malignaggi just has to be a little bit cautious early, just like Lamont Peterson. Right? Not try to open up, certainly not try to do an Amir Khan and try to hunt down Danny Garcia. He needs to figure out Danny's rhythm because, let's face it, Danny's more, rock and roll than he is jazz. Right? It's a few notes with Danny. He's not Charlie Parker here. Right? So, Paulie just has to listen for the music early. And then once he figures out the rhythm and stuff like that, once he trains himself not to fall for Danny's cues, where he looks down, then he's throwing wide punches. Once he figures out, too, that Danny's throwing power only from the outside, right? That none of the power is coming straight. Danny has a pretty good jab, right? He used it against Eric Morales. But you can dodge the jab and you can dodge the wide power, right? Once you figure that out about Danny Garcia, then I believe Malignaggi takes over this fight. He's a live dog, folks, a 6-1 dog. Let me tell you, I'm shocked at the line movement, because Malignaggi opened at something like a 4-1 underdog. Now he's up to 6-1. Right? I think a lot of gamblers here are making a mistake. Understand, though, you need the hedge, right? Because you are dealing with a young lion against an older fighter. Right? Malignaggi was a victim of a recent KO. He did get caught by Sean Porter. But I'll say this, Porter has much more ring coverage than does Danny Garcia. Right? With Sean Porter, you're never safe. Right? He's outside, he's inside. With Danny Garcia, there's a rhythm. Now, I know Garcia has said he was weight drained at 140. That at 147, he's going to be a different fighter. He's going to be up on his toes. Before, he was flat-footed. I typically fade change. Right? I'm a person who, when I hear this time it's going to be different, I'm a skeptic. Especially when it comes to boxing. Right? As Mike Tyson used to say, everyone has a plan until they get hit in the mouth. You show up round 1 and you say, you know what, this fight, I'm going to be different than all my other fights. Now, unless you're that guy who, in different fights, is different people, right? Unless you are that kind of Swiss Army knife type fighter, Andre Ward, right? Guys can't change, right? Unless you're a guy who's an agent of change, who routinely changes. You really are who you are, right? Danny Garcia to me is a mid-range hooker. If there's a different part of his game, that's going to be news to me. Malignaggi's a live underdog. I like Malignaggi to win the fight. I am going to hedge the play with Garcia by KO. Understand, though, once Malignaggi sees Garcia for just a few rounds, I believe Malignaggi is going to solve the puzzle. That's how I see it. Let me hear from you. Leave your comments for me here online. Visit us at gamblersadvisory.com. Thanks for stopping by.